discussing Johan Cruyff, My Turn, Johan Cruyff's autobiography. I think the most important thing about this book is towards the end when Cruyff talks about that everything starts with football. Like you manage a sports team from the ground up, not top down. I think that is the most important insight. And this is definitely transferable to any other place. You pick your choice. Is it the company you're invested in? Is it your own sports club? Is it um, any kind of situation where people manage and people have to decide what what to prioritize. I mean, that's what management really is. Which people should I hire? What is the North Star of my particular company? In any of those situations, Cruyff's insight is invaluable. There is no question about the importance of this particular insight of this book. So that's why I think this book is absolutely worth reading. There's passages in the book that I would say are not necessary or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. That's completely irrelevant. I think you want to take what's good about this, and in any autobiography you will have, personal petty stuff, him talking about his kids or stuff like that, which is irrelevant, which is important to him, but not important to us. But that's not the key. I think this insight is absolutely invaluable, that it starts with football, or it starts with the product. It starts with what's the purpose? Why are you even there? Cruyff's purpose of football is to entertain people, and everything is managed, organized, optimized around that particular subject. And then when you start thinking like that, you realize why this man has been so successful in the realm of football. By the way, he hasn't been very successful in other areas, yeah, but in this particular realm, he has been successful. He's the Rembrandt of football, not the Van Gogh, in the sense that he's Dutch, of course, and Rembrandt, in my, at least from what I understand, has been sort of more the artist that has brought technique and know-how to the surface of art at the expense of, let's say, more divine subjects and that kind of stuff. And I think that's why Cruyff is more of a Rembrandt. I would say, Van Gogh will be more radical. And although Cruyff is very radical, I always thought of him, and even after reading this, he's a pretty down to earth, old school guy. He talks about technique, training, repetition. He's not the hey, in your face, let's try something new kind of guy. So this would be my biggest takeaway of My Turn, Johan Cruyff. This is a Not Even Wrong podcast. It's June 22nd, 2023. This is Krim Delco. Since the last update, we're up 1.4%. The market's up 10 basis points. For the year, we're up 123%. The market's up 13.8%. We're outperforming by 109.2%. There's a big announcement yesterday. Not really an announcement, but a message, a signaling by Tesla, and it has to do with Dojo and their efforts in AI. And I'm going to do a whole separate podcast about this, because this is way too important to just put it sort of as a summary of the market in the beginning. But nevertheless, we're doing very well. And I think the main reason why we're doing well is the bid for AI, on which, by which Tesla is not just profiting, but they're participating. And this announcement of Dojo and what's going on there is absolutely key and important, and I'm going to, like I said, discuss this. But let's get back to the book now. My Turn by Johan Cruyff, autobiography by Johan Cruyff. For new listeners, why am I talking about books here? Books about footballers. What does this have to do with the purpose of the Not Even Wrong podcast, which is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund? Well, the answer is that reading books is not just a pastime of hedge fund managers. It's part of the business. It helps mend our mind. It helps get our mind. It's the yoga of the mind, if you will, or just exercise in general. It helps us understand what is important and how to think about things from a different perspective, and all of those things that are absolutely crucial for the hedge fund business. Now, in terms of Johan Cruyff, I think in addition to having the autobiography of one of the greatest football players and managers in history is invaluable. I think those are the kinds of things that you walk through a bookstore and you're like, is this true? This guy actually wrote a book, and I'm going to be able to read through his mind for hundreds of pages. Yes, it's true. And it's beautiful. And I've had a preliminary series about this book already, where I spoke about the value of entertainment in football and how that is key. The show must go on. I think this is now the formal summary of the book. And like I said in the prelude, the main takeaway is really that you start with football. When you manage a club, or when you coach, or when you advise, or whatever you're doing with a sports club, you always start with the football, which means, okay, what is the most entertaining way to play this game? And once you do that, I think everything else starts falling into place. For example, winning. Well, you can't entertain people if you don't win. It's not going to happen. Playing with your means. This is also a very, very important insight from Johan Cruyff. And he said the thing. One of the biggest phrases of his career is playing. Football has to be played in a simple way, and playing simple football is the hardest thing in the world, because unless you have that mindset, it's very difficult to do what he's saying. But once you have the mindset, it starts becoming very simple. Now, what do I mean by that? For example, you adapt your team to the strengths of your players. You don't just copy somebody else's strategy or tactics. Or even worse, you don't just go into a game with a fixed strategy and tactics. In some games, you want to have players that are fast on the wings. In some games, you want to close some particular opponents. In some games, you know that the left back is relatively slow. You want to play towards that side of the things and make the game faster on that side. So you want to be very flexible and adaptive, but you always find the simplest solution. It's kind of like Occam's razor for sports. So what Cruyff is saying is really Occam's razor for sports. So the same way a beautiful explanation in science is the one that we're looking for, I think it's the same in football, where you want to have the most simple, the most beautiful solution for a particular game. But the fundamental premise of playing a game has to be, always is, and always will be, to entertain the fans, fill the ranks. I think this is absolutely key. So I think another thing that I absolutely strongly believe in is the focus on technique, simple techniques. Pass the ball, control the ball, juggle the ball, control the ball with your chest, header the ball. For goalkeepers, there's a little bit more to that, of course, but it's simple techniques, 5, 6 techniques that you drill and drill and drill inside out. And then you build on those, because you can't build anything else unless you have those techniques. And that's another thing that is very clear in the world of Johan Cruyff, which is, if you don't have those fundamental techniques, I don't know about your physique, I don't know about any of that stuff. Look, if you take Cruyff's disciple, who is now certainly the most successful, manager in European football, which is Pep Guardiola. Guardiola is obsessively focused on technique. Like, yes, he brought in Haaland, but Haaland has the technique. He's a very fast, very powerful player, but he has the technique. So technique is always what counts. It's always where it starts, and then you build from there. So this, to me, is incredibly important. And I think what's beautiful about the book is also that these techniques can be learned, right? It's not like you have the God-given talent. And I think, to me, and now I want to sort of do the tangent here, which lends itself to the situation in U.S. soccer. My son is in this particular scene right now. He plays at high level MLS Next here in Silicon Valley, and he is with a team, the Anza Force. He's playing, and he's sort of exposed to all the good stuff and the bad stuff that U.S. soccer has to offer. I think the good stuff is really that There's a lot of emphasis now on development, on youth development, but the bad stuff is I think that the teams are underskilled, undercoached, and undertrained. To be, what's the difference? Skill building, the skills training, build the physical training, and then coaching, get them the tactics. So that I think is not very good here in the U.S. And that's, I think, the main reason why the United States, even though a lot of money is being invested, MLS is becoming a bigger and bigger league. But there's way too much Me Too, mentality and stuff like that. So unfortunately, I don't see the United States soccer scene getting any better anytime soon because, again, underskilled, undercoached, and undertrained. Now, let's get back to the book. I think what this book is a good example, a really beautiful example of the sort of transfer learning that you can use from a book like this for the hedge fund business. And this is ultimately the reason why we are doing all this. We're in the hedge fund business. The purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So when Cruyff said it starts with the football and then you manage from the ground up, that's exactly how we think about our investments. It starts with the product and then you manage from the ground up. Okay, who's running the company? What is my positioning? What is my risk? But it always starts with the company and the product. Excuse me, with the product. So in terms of Tesla, what is the product? And we can have many, many podcast series about what is the product? How do you define that? It doesn't matter. But to have that mindset right now, it starts with the product. Okay, what is it you're actually selling? This is the famous phrase in Marketing 101. If a drilling company is trying to understand what is it they're selling, the answer is they're not selling drills, they're selling holes. So what exactly is Tesla selling? Tesla is selling transportation to get from A to B in the most entertaining way possible. This would be my 5 cents into what the product of Tesla is. But what's key about all this is really to start with the mindset. I think it's your unique interpretation of all these things. It's your unique way of dealing with this. How you actually position yourself, what your risk is, how you deal with setbacks. When Tesla announces bad numbers or bad news come through the wire, how do you deal with that? Like all those things are that's your unique skill as a portfolio manager. But what you really need to understand is it starts with the product. The same with NVIDIA, our two positions right now. What is the product of NVIDIA, and why do we think that they have a monopoly and deserve a very high growth and growth rate, and also a very high multiple? So back to Cruyff's book again. I think can't emphasize enough. It's about the mindset, and that's also why he's been winning. I mean, this man has been winning all over the place. Cruyff has been winning games, trophies, wherever he came. He's one of those men, like Pep Guardiola and like Arteta, who is the disciple of Guardiola. And there's a whole lineage of coaches, which I think is beautiful. And just as a tangent, I've just noticed now my son is in the process of college recruiting in the United States in soccer. He wants to play for a high-level D1 college. And he noticed that there is a lineage within U.S. soccer starting from, I don't need to name names now, but there's a lineage. Actually, why shouldn't I? So there's a coach, Bobby Clark from Scotland, who came over and started coaching at universities. And now his son and some of the assistant coaches that he had are coaching at different universities. One is, for example, the University of Washington and so on and so forth. Others are on the northeast side of the United States. And there's a lineage here. There's a legacy. There are things that people have taught other people, and it's beautiful. Those are very, very important things. This is the old artisanal sort of culture of way back when you go. If you read Michelangelo's biography in the Renaissance of Florence, Italy, there is this okay, I can learn from an artisan. I can learn from somebody and transfer his or her knowledge and do my bit with it and get better at it. Those are beautiful things. Those are things that you want to stick with as a human, and also, of course, as an investor. That kind of legacy. I think this is also what made Silicon Valley the legacy of people who started the first big, I would say the Renegade 8 who left and started Intel and then built this whole beautiful place here of innovation, wealth creation, and creativity. So to summarize, My Turn by Johan Cruyff, highly recommend the book. There are things in the book that you'll want to skip, petty stuff. He talks about fights that he had with certain people. There's definitely some sort of settling of issues that he had with people that he wanted to put in the book. And you can feel that. You can skip those. It doesn't really matter if you're not interested in gossip. But the insight you get into football, how to coach and how to run and how to win is invaluable. And how you win is you start with the game and you manage from the ground up, and the game starts with technique. The game always starts with technique. This is also what, let's say, that John Danaher, one of the greatest jiu-jitsu and fighting coaches currently, says that confidence and the winning mentality always starts with skills. So skills, technique, that's where it starts. Then you build the game, and then you create an entertainment based on that game, and that's how you win. That's how you win trophies. That's how you win spectators. That's how you have purpose in what you do, because that's the purpose, is to entertain. I think no matter in what industry you are, if you can find a way to entertain people or customers or both, then you will win. Thank you.